Judge Alan Prescott never expected that a minor courtroom dispute would end up igniting a massive constitutional clash. Tampa, Florida's quiet legal community, would soon find itself thrust into the limelight. Pam Bondi, an accomplished attorney known for her precise legal arguments and determined demeanor, was about to enter a battle not of laws, but of rights. The right to personal expression versus the often rigid expectations of judicial neutrality. Pam had always prided herself on her professionalism, her sharp legal mind, and her ability to handle any case with poise. Today she was dressed in her usual business attire, prepared to represent her client in a civil case. The courtroom, a familiar environment for her, was filled with the usual assortment of lawyers, defendants, and spectators, all seated in respectful silence, awaiting the judge's arrival. The day seemed to be another routine affair. But Pam had no idea that she was about to face a challenge that would completely redefine the boundaries of courtroom decorum. As Pam walked toward the defense table, she noticed the tension in the air. It wasn't the usual courtroom ambiance of hushed whispers and occasional rustling of papers. Today it felt as though the room was collectively holding its breath. At the bench, Judge Prescott sat, his expression unreadable, staring down at his desk with a cool, calculating gaze. But his eyes weren't on his papers or the case before him. They were locked on the small gold cross hanging from Pam's neck. For a brief moment, the room felt frozen in time. Pam could feel his gaze on her, a sense of discomfort creeping into her as she walked to the table. This wasn't the first time she'd worn the cross to court. It was a small symbol of her faith, one she wore without thinking about it. But this time, something felt different. Judge Prescott cleared his throat loudly, signaling that the court was in session. The room fell into silence. "Miss Bondi," the judge began, his voice firm and authoritative, "I trust that you are aware of the rules regarding courtroom attire and decorum?" Pam nodded, already anticipating where this was headed. She had worked with Prescott before, and while they hadn't always agreed, she had never expected him to challenge her in such an overt manner. "Yes, Your Honor," she replied calmly. "I'm afraid I must address the issue of your necklace," Prescott continued. "Religious symbols, whether visible or not, have no place in my courtroom. It is my belief that such symbols can interfere with the neutrality of the court." The words hit Pam like a thunderclap. For a moment, she stood there trying to process what had just been said. Was this really happening? Was the judge seriously telling her to remove her religious symbol? Her mind raced, calculating her options. This wasn't just a legal issue, it was a personal one. She had spent her entire life balancing her professional identity with her personal faith, and now it seemed like the two worlds were about to collide in the most public of ways. "I'm sorry, Your Honor," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "But I believe that the First Amendment protects my right to freely express my religion. I wear this cross as a personal expression of my faith, just as someone might wear a wedding ring or a family heirloom." The judge's expression remained unchanged, his gaze still fixed on the cross. "Your argument is noted, Miss Bondi, but in this courtroom, I am the final authority. Remove the cross or face a fine for violating courtroom decorum." Pam's heart raced. The silence in the room was palpable, every spectator waiting for her response. The moment stretched on, and she felt the weight of everyone's gaze. This was more than just a challenge to her personal rights, it was a direct confrontation with the authority of the judicial system itself. Pam took a deep breath, her mind working quickly. She could feel the pressure mounting, but she wasn't about to back down. "Your Honor," she said slowly, choosing her words with care, "I have spent my entire career advocating for justice. I believe that part of that justice is ensuring that individuals, whether they are defendants or lawyers, have the right to express themselves freely, especially in a courtroom. If you're asking me to choose between my faith and my profession, then I must respectfully disagree." The judge's eyes narrowed. "This isn't a discussion about faith. This is a matter of courtroom decorum." "No, Your Honor," Pam countered. "This is about the Constitution, the very document that guarantees us freedom of expression." This case is about whether or not personal rights are being respected in your courtroom, and I don't believe that they are." The words hung in the air, and the room was still, as though everyone was waiting for the judge's next move. Pam knew she had just thrown down the gauntlet. This wasn't a typical courtroom exchange. This was a battle over constitutional rights. Judge Prescott's expression remained impassive, but there was a glimmer of something in his eyes, perhaps uncertainty or maybe frustration. After a long pause, he spoke again, his voice tight with authority. "I will give you one more chance, Miss Bondi. Remove the cross, or I will have no choice but to issue a fine for contempt." Pam stood tall, her eyes meeting his without flinching. "I will not remove it, Your Honor," she said firmly. The judge's gavel came down with a sharp crack, signaling the end of the exchange. The courtroom was filled with an uneasy silence, the tension hanging heavy in the air. Pam could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her, but she didn't waver. She had made her stand. In the hours following the courtroom encounter, the phone calls and messages began to flood in. Pam was a seasoned litigator, accustomed to the usual professional chatter after a case, but today was different. The moment in court had been charged with more than just legal tension. It had touched a nerve that went far beyond the boundaries of the courtroom. People were talking, and the media was taking notice. By the time Pam returned to her office, a message from the Florida Bar Association was waiting for her. It was brief but to the point, advising her to respect the authority of the judiciary and warning her that the case might have repercussions for her legal career. Pam wasn't surprised. She knew this battle was far from over. Pam had always been a fighter, and she wasn't about to let a judge impose his personal biases on her or anyone else. She reached out to a friend and colleague in the media, Lisa Reynolds, a seasoned reporter who had covered many high-profile legal cases. Pam knew that if anyone could help her bring attention to this issue, it was Lisa. "I need this story out there," Pam told Lisa over the phone, her voice calm but urgent. "What happened in that courtroom isn't just about me. It's about every lawyer who's ever had to fight for their personal rights in the face of judicial overreach." Lisa listened intently before responding, her voice filled with resolve. "I'll make sure it gets the attention it deserves. This is bigger than just one case, Pam. This is a battle over the very nature of our rights and freedoms." And so, the story broke. The media coverage exploded with reports about the confrontation between Pam and Judge Prescott flooding the airwaves. Legal experts, political analysts, and commentators weighed in, debating the implications of the case. Some supported Pam's stance, arguing that her First Amendment rights were being unjustly trampled, while others criticized the judge for his lack of tolerance for religious expression in the courtroom. The issue quickly became a flashpoint, drawing national attention. The Florida Judicial Review Board, which oversaw judicial conduct, announced that it would review Judge Prescott's actions in light of the controversy. Pam knew that this review might not lead to immediate consequences for the judge, but the publicity was enough to force the legal community to take a hard look at how personal beliefs were handled in the courtroom. In the days that followed, Pam received a flurry of calls from colleagues, friends, and even complete strangers, all offering their support. Many expressed admiration for her willingness to stand up to the judicial system, while others encouraged her to continue fighting the battle on behalf of all lawyers and defendants who had been subjected to similar situations. Despite the growing pressure and the media storm, Pam remained focused. She knew that this wasn't just about one judge or one case. This was about the principle of freedom to express one's beliefs, to stand up for what was right, and to ensure that the courtroom remained a place where justice prevailed, not personal bias. As the controversy continued to unfold, legal scholars began to weigh in, offering their insights into the broader implications of Pam's case. Many experts agreed that the First Amendment offered strong protection for individuals' rights to religious expression, even in a courtroom setting. However, the challenge lay in balancing this freedom with the need for courtroom decorum and the judge's duty to maintain order and neutrality. Pam's case raised important questions about the boundaries of personal expression in the courtroom. Should a judge be allowed to dictate what symbols a lawyer can wear, or should personal rights be protected, even in the face of a judge's authority. The legal community was divided, but Pam was undeterred. She knew that her fight wasn't just for herself, it was for every individual who had ever been silenced in a courtroom. In the weeks following the controversy, Pam received a formal letter from the Florida Bar Association indicating that they had reviewed the situation and decided not to pursue any disciplinary action against her. It was a victory, but one that came with a caveat. The Florida Bar issued a statement emphasizing the importance of respecting judicial authority while still maintaining that individuals' rights to free expression must be protected. For Pam, the battle was far from over, but she felt a sense of accomplishment. She had stood her ground, and in doing so had sparked a much-needed conversation about the intersection of personal beliefs, judicial authority, and the Constitution. Months later, Pam looked back on the case with a sense of pride. The legal community had begun to address the concerns she had raised, and the issue of personal expression in courtrooms was now on the national radar. Judge Prescott, on the other hand, had faced significant backlash for his handling of the case. His reputation was damaged, and many lawyers were now hesitant to appear before him. Pam knew that this was just the beginning. The case had set a new precedent, one that would likely shape courtroom decorum and individual rights for years to come. She had taken a stand, and in the process had helped to redefine the boundaries of freedom in the courtroom. As she prepared for her next case, Pam knew that the fight wasn't over. There would always be challenges, always be battles to fight. But she also knew that she had made a difference one case at a time.